Did a nice job on the car. The wrap looks good. God damn it, I shouldn't have. Let's put that back into vibrate mode. It's time to talk about Overmountain, or more formally as its full name is, the Overmountain Rally Tennessee. This is our second go at this. We were here last year, and at the end of last year when ARA put it on their schedule, I was kind of surprised. Literally the week after we left was when Hurricane Helene, or the remnants, I guess, Helene? Every time I see it spelled that way, it reminds me of somebody I used to work with who's an immigrant from South Africa. But in either case, the hurricane remnants came through, blew down a lot of trees, rained a lot of rain. Most of the damage was in North Carolina, but large swaths of the damage were extending into eastern Tennessee, where the rally was last year. Our Airbnb was just a couple of miles from a hospital that got evacuated and from a dam that briefly was letting more water past it than typically Niagara Falls has, and that was something like 2 or 3 times its design strength. But it held. Nevertheless, there was flooding in downtown Newport. Everything was just terrible. And you could just see video after video of roads washed out, just erosion gullies, everything going bad. And when ARA put it on the schedule, I'm like, are there going to be enough roads to rally on? And it turns out the answer is yes. They did simplify the rally a little bit. Instead of having 2 headquarters cities and having to set up service in one location and then break it down and move it to the second location, so Johnson City and Newport, they simply headquartered everything in Newport. And instead of having service at the fairgrounds, they actually had everything. Park exposés, service, tech inspection, everything at the Newport Speedway, which greatly simplified things for the service crews. Honestly, for the actual rally drivers, we don't really care because we'll just get in the car and go wherever we need to go. Ironically, of course, now that we're having Argonaut service the car and build the car in the first place, the setting up and breaking down of service is no longer really an issue that is mine. But I can appreciate it for having done it the hard way. Last year, of course, was less successful than we would have liked. In fact, not successful at all from the overheating.
Uh-oh.
That smells like coolant.
Yeah, that's where it's coming from, up here around the coolant tank.
To the famous inertia switch problem, or infamous, I guess I should say. I don't think we completed a single stage last year, so that was extremely frustrating. Missed out on all the jumps, which is actually probably the better because, let's face it, I know the guy who built that Focus, and would it have survived the jump? Only one way to find out, right? And now we'll never know. In either case, we made it down to Newport, checked into the Airbnb, which thoughtfully included a dog. Just random neighborhood dog coming around checking people out. Cool. Gotta like that. Karen, Phil's wife, allowed Phil to bring her new to them 2024? Like, relatively new-ish Subaru WRX down for recce. He pulled out some winter tires that had been sitting in their barn for a while, and they must have had a slow leak in them because he kept having to re-up the pressure during the week, but no big deal. He didn't have a skid plate on the thing, unlike the Mazda Speed 3, which had a skid plate, so I had to be extra gentle when we were doing recce. On the other hand, it did survive. Didn't really bang anything except maybe an extra dent in the exhaust system, which they planned on upgrading or changing anyway, so no big deal there. To get our feet wet with the new car, we went to testing. We actually met the car in the Walmart parking lot the first night we got down because I took the seats out of the Focus because the seats that were in the previous iteration of the Fiesta were not as comfortable as our real introduction to the car came on Thursday when we went to testing. The one thing that was not quite ready for the car, since they were kind of in a hurry to build it, and this was relatively low priority compared to, shocks and engine management and roll cage and all of those other things, was the video system was not up and running. So we didn't actually record any well, no. We tried to record testing, but somehow apparently I'd thrown a dead battery or something into the into the action camera because we got a few seconds of footage and then it cut out. So battery life would be an issue for the rest of the week, but no big deal there. I mean, if we lose some footage, who cares? We still got to race. So I don't have footage of every stage. Whatever. Don't have the intercom audio from every stage. That's fine. I got enough of it to make a decent video here, hopefully. So I did some testing. Went slow, just kind of built up speed a little bit to try to get my feet wet with the car. On a random trip to Jim Thorpe, PA, I had found the perfect sticker for the car and planned on putting it inside, but the Argonaut guys insisted that I have it outside. Headed off towards Recce. There was an impromptu Recce driver meeting. Actually, it wasn't really scheduled or anything. It was just Phil and I pulled over to swap seats and, take a leak and have a smoke. And like 8 other cars decided that was the place to do the same thing. So we were all together, just there randomly hanging out. Recce was fine. We wrote notes on a stage and mostly used the Jembas, but that was fine. Briefly, we were pacing one of the Vermont Subarus. That's probably the only time I will ever get to stay on Travis's tail. Don't ever expect that in an actual race situation. In fact, actually, the GPS took us on a shortcut, and technically, I got ahead of Travis Pastrana, very briefly. But not while racing. That's okay. I can brag about it. To people who don't know. So the first day. First day is one of the super specials. 2 laps around the Newport Speedway. The rule set was basically pull up to where we were starting. If the light is green, we're ready to race. The officials will count you down. Ignore the rally safe. The official count is more important than the actual rally safe. Do 2 laps. That means 4 jumps, 1 on each straightaway. And if the lights flash yellow, you have completed your 2 laps, or there's a mechanical problem with the other car. In either case, slow down and get off the track. Well, as Chris said when we got back, man, you guys have the worst luck. Sure enough, light goes green, we start zooming around. I take the first jump very slowly, just because I don't want to break the car on the first night. I'd really rather not break the car at all, but definitely not before we've done at least some gravel racing. That's the reason we're down here. Take the first jump, don't catch any air, quite deliberately. Start coming around well, I guess in NASCAR they consider an oval to have 2 turns, so turns 1 and 2, well, 3 and 4, I guess, at this point. It's actually very odd. I've never done circle track racing. I've done circuits, road courses at Pit Race in Mid-Ohio, but I've never done circle track racing, and Newport Speedway has a pretty impressive 20-degree bank, and that was kind of odd to drive on. Start coming around the back straight, started lining up with the ramp, and wouldn't you know it, the lights go yellow. Let off the gas. Sure enough, our competitor broke down and had kind of coasted out of the way to get up the hill, had to be flat-toed off. I was more than happy to not be the first person to get flat-toed in this event. Sucks for them, though. So we started day 2 with some actual gravel stages. Bit of a park expose in the morning, and then we headed out to stage 2. Unfortunately, that was the stage that one of the earlier folks crashed on. So, I forget how far back he was, but it was only half a dozen spouts back. So the vast majority of us showed up to the start of the stage. We're told to switch to the alternate transit plans on page 116 or whatever of the route book, so we basically skipped 2, got an assigned bogey time, and drove on to stage 3, where we started our day. I was trying to keep the car unbroken. I was trying not to fling the car off the road and roll it again. Our goal for the day was just to drive every stage mile and come back into service under our own power. Stage 3 went fine. Had a nice slow time, but it was an on-the-road time. Didn't have any major recovery issues. Still kind of getting the car under me. So we pull up to stage 4. We're counting down. Get to about the 40-second countdown, and we get waved off. And then the ambulance went down, and we had kind of flashbacks to a previous stage where this had happened.
Why does it feel like deja vu?
Should we volunteer our services preemptively?
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
Let me get out.
Fortunately, we very shortly found out that there were no injuries involved, and it was simply the rally safe. Even though there's 3 buttons, there's basically 2 options, fire and medical. And if you have a fire, you're supposed to hit fire. And if you have literally anything else, you're supposed to hit medical. So that's just a limitation of the communication system. And when the folks blocked the stage the way they crashed, they hit medical as instructed, and the ambulance went, and there were no injuries. So we transited that stage. We managed to catch up to some guy with 10 inches of ground clearance in his truck who was doing 10 miles an hour. That was a long time. Like, buddy, the Honda Civic that caught up to you wants to go faster. Should have taken that truck right to the nearest Nissan dealership and turned it in for a leaf. But we eventually made it to stage 5, Weaver's Bend, which is the stage we'd written notes for. We were supposed to have done that 3 times, but that was the first stage we got called off of, unfortunately. But we finished that without major issue and made it back to service under our own power. The afternoon went fine. Stages 6, 7, and 8, basically a repeat of 3, 4, 5. Unfortunately, because everything was running behind a bit at this point, as Rally does, despite their level bets efforts to get the pack of us kind of closer together, well, we got to experience our first night stage. 8 should have technically been done like right around sunset, but what happened was 6 became kind of an evening stage, 7 became a twilight stage. We had the lights on, but we didn't, strictly speaking, need them. You could kind of tell that they were on. But by the time we got to 8, which was Weaver Bend a second time, it was outright pitch black, and we were doing a night stage. For the stages that we got to do twice, which was a limited number of stages, unfortunately, because of all the stages we transited, I generally got a little bit faster from the first running to the second running. The night stage I did not get faster on, so mostly an improvement. But when I looked at all the other people in class, I realized that all of them lost time on the night stage as well, and I didn't lose as much time as most of them, so I'll actually consider that an improvement, even if the numbers look back to service. And once again, there was a spectator stage being held at the Newport Speedway. This was new for this year. Last year it was just the same super special that we'd had the night before. But this was a second night of festivities with a slightly different plan. Instead of 2 of us racing at the time, it was basically start at the actual legitimate start line of the racetrack, drop into the infield, do a loop of the infield, come back out, kind of spin around a barrel, and then do basically like a lap and a half of the track. 3 jumps, and at that point, when you crossed the official finish line, you were done and could exit to service. I decided to be a little more aggressive with the jumps with each successive one, and I I don't have time to go through the procedure to request permission to use the footage, but you can actually watch this. Both Dirtfish and ARA were there from actually opposite sides of the stadium. And it's kind of funny. The Dirtfish announcer, very professional, talking about technique. Oh, that's tiny, you know. The ARA announcer, very amusing. Yeah, I actually have the times marked down on our Facebook page if you want to look up those posts. But so imagine the ARA's coverage being how you discover that the sensor that detects whether your the brake is being pushed, has shorted out. So my brake lights were on whether I was braking or not. Very exciting and humorous. The brakes are lava. Yes. So, day 2 started with the longest stage of the rally, Big Clifty, 9-point-something miles. I was given the advice by Sean, teammate Sean Donnelly, in the Clio, which broke again. Imagine that, right? He had said, this is a stage that catches a lot of people out, so be careful. And indeed, it did catch a number of people out. We saw some cars off there. This stage actually almost caught us off. I over-rotated the car a little bit and was headed for the cliff. I knew I didn't have enough speed to go over it, but I was worried that I would have just enough speed to catch a single wheel off the end and get stuck that way. Fortunately, I yelled at the car and it got back on in the style of Carlton Fisk waving his home run ball fair, for those of you who remember that or have heard about it. Wow! All the stages on day 2 or day 3, I guess technically by this point. All the last day stages were longer than previous stages. Pretty much everything on Saturday was the longest stage was 7. Most of them were 4 and 5. 7 was the number of the day on Sunday. So there's a couple 7s, and then Big Clifty was more than 9. Things were going well, though. I was starting to get... We had so many 3s. So many 3s.
50, left 3 into right 3 minus.
There were so many 3s that I felt I was really starting to get kind of the hang of those. I was even getting to the point of using the handbrake pretty confidently, finding out where it was, realizing that I had to grab it a little bit before I needed it, those sorts of things. Not getting into too much trouble with the car, maybe a required recovery here and there where the stuff was looser than I realized, but by and large, not turning in any record times, at the bottom of the pack, but still managing. We did have a somewhat unique experience. Obviously, we've been at stages that had to be canceled because of crashes, but for the first time ever, we were a couple cars back in line from the start, and they waved everybody off because they had to have law enforcement come because of an unruly person at the finish. Yeah, so we all pulled off to the side, and the forest ranger and the county sheriff went and zipped on down the stage to take care of some idiot at the other end who was acting out, and and then we just transited the stage. So we missed out on that one, but at least it was a new and interesting way to not get to drive on a stage. Kind of unfortunate, though. Pulled into service, get the car all torqued up, refilled on fuel. Started the afternoon, which was basically just a repeat of the morning. Pulled off Big Clifty again, no problem. Pulled off stage 14, which is max attack patch at that point, no problem. And entered the final stage of the day, which is Middle Road Down 2. Repeat of the Middle Road Down 1 in the morning. I think I just overcorrected a little bit. Came out of a corner, got a little more rotation than expected, so I had to make a little bit of a correction. Probably overcorrected just a little bit, and the ass end came around. Saw the car heading straight to the edge of a cliff. I stood on those brakes, and man, did we stop before we went over the cliff. Which is good. Didn't break the car. it turns out that our front wheels were still actually on the level surface at the top. So I threw it into reverse, tried to back up. Unfortunately, they were so close to the edge that they were in the soft stuff at the edge, and all I did was dig myself a little bit deeper. Tried a couple of times to spin the wheels backwards, get some traction. If we had had a lucky rock, if we had had a lucky tree root, something with traction, if we had just stopped 8 or 12 inches sooner, we would have been in the firm stuff. And we would have been able to back the car up, point down, at which point I probably would have just driven out at transit speed and called it a day. Unfortunately, we couldn't get there, so the safety sweep had to pass us by. I think he kind of felt for us, and I think he might have kind of like snuck us in, but then heavy sweep came over and had to lock up to a wheel and just tugged us back a couple feet. At which point we were able to kind of pull forward and back up and drive on. So, yeah, we were about 7 miles shy of actually finishing the rally. With the exception of the final stage, we managed to finish every stage we started, though. So as disappointing as it was to have that happen and get stuck not getting to finish the rally, I have to, on the whole, count it as a success. Maybe not a complete resounding success, but maybe like 90% successful. We drove back into service under our own power. We never broke the car severely. The worst thing we did to the car was on the final spin out, we broke one of the mud flap mounts up front, and the impact from the jump at the spectator stage managed to break the fog light mount. But no major damage, nothing that would have kept us from running, nothing that would have kept us from driving all the way back to service. So we did return to service each time under our own power. I think that's about as good as it's going to get, at least for now. We were kind of debating about whether to go to LSPR. I had to think about, like, okay, I better sit down and run the budget numbers, because it's more expensive to race with the Argonaut support than it is to just show up. But kind of looking at the numbers, it's really not that much more expensive, and certainly when you consider the time I put into the car, I can either work a couple extra shifts or I can put hours and hours and hours into the Focus. And I'm a self-taught mechanic. Clearly my abilities were not up to the car necessarily most of the time. So as much as I'll miss somewhat working on the car, I still have other cars to work on, and I still have a Focus to completely disassemble for parts, and then that way I can sell the car and all of its parts together. But on the whole, mild disappointment, but pretty. We did 2 out of the 3 goals that we were looking for. Didn't break the car, drove to every service under our own power. We just would have liked to actually complete the rally. We didn't. But we did. I mean, even if we technically didn't have the completion, we at least did drive the last stage, just at transit speeds. Whatever. Although I have to admit that just to add insult to injury, on the way home I'm driving along and passing some cars, and up ahead I see a car with its hazards on the shoulder. No big deal, but as I'm getting closer I see it's a Blue WRX. Now, there were at least 4 of them in the county for the race. Ours, Vermont's, I think a couple of the volunteers or spectators or something. But I passed it and looked in the rearview mirror, and there's a little decal in the corner, kind of right where we had our recce vehicle decal. I'm like, uh-oh. Pick up the phone. Hey, Phil, you wouldn't happen to be by the side of the road with your hazards on, would you? Yeah, sure as shit, that was me passing him, and it turns out that tire that was giving him trouble the last few days just finally gave up the ghost, so Asked him if he needed me to come back and rescue him. He's like, I'm fine. I'm just calling around to see who has an appropriate sized tire that will actually be able to throw that on, so I don't have to wait for it to be delivered. So ultimately, he did get towed into Johnson City, ironically enough, and got the tire on and managed to drive home. Although I'm just going to accuse him of trying to catch up to the Mountain Dew truck that I saw later. Not really. But whatever. In either case, when we were sitting there waiting to get towed out, I think it became very obvious that we needed to go to LSPR. So, Argonaut's booked. My flight is booked because it turns out it's actually cheaper to fly than to drive, weirdly enough. And we're ready to go. So we were on the waiting list, and they extended the entries from 75 to 80, which was awesome of them. So we managed to sneak in under the wire, and we get to go to LSPR. So for those of you who are physically on the ground, we will see you there, and for the rest of you, we'll see you here online. The afternoon went fine. Stages 6, 7, and 8, basically a repeat of 4, 5, and 6. No, that's not right. The afternoon went fine. Stages 7, 8, 9. No, fuck. Why can't I do numbers?